Well, look who's here to join us today in this final reading of Apple Mary and Dennie's Lucky Apples. So glad you could join me. Where's chapter 16? Where is it? That final chapter of this book. All right, here we go. Here we go.
Home, sweet home.
The collapse of the floor under Mr. Sprocket caused quite a commotion and brought Miss Fitz, the matron, on the run. When Apple Mary introduced Mr. Sprocket as the business manager of her wealthy friend, the matron was all excited.
My stars, Mr. Sprocket, I am so sorry. I've always hoped a trustee would fall through that porch. But not you,
she declared. To Mary, she moaned.
I'm afraid Mr. Sprocket dislikes the orphanage, Mary. I wish I could do something to win him over. Ask him to stay for lunch with you,
suggested Apple Mary, with a twinkle in her eye.
Oh, there's nothing to eat. But what the children always have,
she protested.
He wouldn't like that.
Mary ignored this and promptly extended the invitation.
Mr. Sprocket, Miss Fitz wants us to stay and have lunch with her. That's the first good news I've heard around here,
grinned Sprocket, while Miss Fitz faded away toward the kitchen in embarrassment.
I'm starved. The sooner we eat, the better.
Miss Fitz was still worrying when she and Mary went to join Mr. Sprocket at the luncheon table.
But, Mary, he'll be insulted. The food is good enough for the children, but Mr. Sprocket's different. You bet he is,
grinned Apple Mary.
That's the trouble with him. Come on, he's waiting for us.
As they seated themselves, Sprocket dipped up the first spoonful of food from the bowl before him. Immediately, he began to splutter and choke.
What the? Say, what is this stuff?
He yelped.
Why, Mr. Sprocket, it's the same food the children have,
Mary explained quietly. Sprocket pushed back his chair and stamped out of the room. At that, Miss Fitz burst into tears.
Now you've done it, Mary,
she sobbed.
He's furious. He'll tell his employer and she won't give the home a cent. Miss Fitz, more good will come of this than you'll ever know,
promised Apple Mary. At home again, she took Sprocket to task.
I'm ashamed of you, Mr. Sprocket,
Apple Mary declared.
Insulting Miss Fitz at the orphanage when she was nice enough to ask us to lunch. Well, what a lunch,
muttered Sprocket.
It was the best they had,
Apple Mary defended.
She may fool you with that story, Mary,
snorted Sprocket.
But not me. Those orphans have more to eat than that. Oh, no, they don't,
Mary insisted.
They're glad to get that much. Now, do you understand why I want to give them a new home and enough to eat and wear? Okay, Mary.
Sprocket gave in at last.
But while you're putting money into the orphan's home, don't forget the poorhouse. When this spending spree's over, Dennie will be going to one, and you'll be on your way to the other.
The following day, Mary set out with Bill and Dennie to look over new settings for the orphan's home.
Mr. Sprocket looked up some places for the new home,
she said.
I have the list here. Bill can drive us around to look at them. Old Sprocket ain't the kind of fellow I'd have picking out orphans' homes,
grumbled Bill.
He found some property he thought was a bargain.
Apple Mary explained.
It won't hurt us to see it.
But when they had seen it, a gloomy, run-down building in the middle of a factory district, Mary had to agree with Bill.
I guess you're right,
she admitted.
Here's the first place. This won't do. You should have told him to pick out some place for himself.
Bill chuckled, looking at the decrepit building.
He'd have done a lot better then.
They climbed back into the car and drove to the next place, an abandoned house at the edge of an outlying village. Here, roofs were falling down, shutters dangled loosely, and the whole place looked as if a strong breath of wind would blow it down.
Huh. I don't think much of this one either,
sniffed Apple Mary.
Grandma, let's go pick our own,
begged Dennie.
All right. Bill, drive around, and when we see something that suits us, we'll stop,
Mary decided. Bill touched the cap of his new uniform smartly and drove on. The three friends were silent, watching the homes they passed. At last, Apple Mary broke the silence.
Well, how's this place?
She suggested.
Aw, I don't like that one, Grandma,
Dennie objected.
There's no yard to play in and no trees. Well, the thing to do is imagine that we're orphans and then pick a place where we'd like to live,
was Bill's thought.
Good idea, Bill,
applauded Apple Mary. Happily. When at last they did stop, it was at a big rambling framed house. Deserted, but still homelike in its sweep of tree-shaded lawn.
Oh, Grandma, here's a swell place,
cried Dennie, grinning with delight.
Look at the trees, and the yard, and the flowers. Those ain't flowers, Dennie. Them's weeds,
Bill corrected, smilingly, as he lifted the youngster out of the car and turned to help Apple Mary.
I believe this place could be fixed up all right,
Apple Mary agreed, as the three of them hung over the front gate.
We could have a garden and swings and paint the house white. It would be lovely. Well, what's the matter with you two?
She finished, as she noticed Dennie and Bill leaning against the fence, sighing deeply
Don't you like it? Yeah, only you're sure making me wish that I was an orphan.
Bill grinned sheepishly. So Mary and Denny's lucky apples were to bring happiness not only to themselves and their friends,
but to dozens of friendless children
as well. So they found the home they needed. And it's a great happy ending. I'm so glad you joined me for this little book, this big little book. Actually, it's the better little book. We'll see you next time.